What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jay and today we're going to talk about Count of Monte Cristo, a quintessential revenge story, one of my favorite classics of all time and one that I think that a lot of fantasy readers would love. I don't think the story needs an introduction. It's the revenge story. It's the definition of a revenge story. It's the story of a young man who has been wronged by some people in his life, who loses years of his life because of these people, and who dedicates the rest of his life in planning a revenge against these people. Well, this is going to be a non-spoilery review. I'm still going to talk about the premise of the story because I think this book is particularly hard to talk about without kind of knowing what the book is actually about. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the premise. I don't think that it's going to affect your enjoyment at all. I don't consider these as a spoiler, but if you are super spoiler sensitive, you can probably skip this video. So as I was saying, this book is the quintessential revenge story. It's a revenge epic in every sense of that word. So this story is about this young man named Edmond Dantes, who in his early 20s was falsely accused for something by three men in his life. And because of that false accusation, he is sentenced to jail. He spends years and years of his youth in that jail. And then he's able to break out of that jail, and he dedicates the rest of his life to take revenge, to seek justice for what was done to him. But the story is not just about revenge, right? This story is an epic in every sense of the word. It's much more about revenge. It's about consequences. It's about greed, love, willpower, determination, ambition, redemption, forgiveness, mercy. It's a lot about a lot of these things, and that's what makes this such a good book for me. It touches on so many themes. It talks about so many things. That's kind of why I think that this is such a good book. It's an epic in every sense of the word. The first 300 pages of the Count of Monte Cristo are some of the best pages that I have ever read in my entire life. The book moves super quickly. The chapters are super page turny. You kind of go one more chapter in the first 300 pages. It goes super quick and it's super engaging. You get invested in the characters really quickly. But at the end of these 3 pages, as I had mentioned in the premise of the book, he is falsely accused of something, and because of that, he ends up in jail. I think he gets a life sentence. I'm not sure about that. But he spends around 20 years in that prison because of something that he never did. After the first 300 pages, there comes a huge tonal shift in the book where the book sorts of changes its focus, where the first 300 pages are kind of dedicated in setting up the premise for you, in setting you to care for the character, to care for this need for revenge, in sort of making you empathize with this character's need for revenge from these people. But after the 300 page mark, this kind of takes a huge tonal shift where we are now in the thick of it, where we are now focusing on how to take that revenge. And this is a tonal shift which some people might not appreciate a lot, but in my opinion that tonal shift serves the purpose, because like I said, this book is not just about the revenge. If it was just about the revenge, we'd probably get the revenge in the next 200 or 300 pages. But the reason that this is a 1200 page monstrosity is because we spend the next 800 to 900 pages living with the enemy. That's one of the biggest themes of Count of Monte Cristo, where Dantes is ready to live with the enemy. He's ready to delay the gratification of getting a quick revenge, a quick justice, in favor of doing it right. He is ready to play the long game. He's ready to wait years and years until he gets the right revenge that he has been looking for. So after the 300 page mark, we get introduced to a whole bunch of characters, because Dantes is at this point trying to integrate himself in the life of these people, in the lives of these 3 men who had wronged him. It has been years since they saw him, and he has changed dramatically as a person. He has transformed into a whole new person, so these people don't recognize him. So this new personality of Dantes, this new personality that these 3 men, they don't recognize, he tries to integrate himself into the lives of these men, and he tries to influence their lives. He makes one small move here, and you can sort of see the ripple effects of that move. And it's a very slow and methodical process. Dantes is very focused in how he wants to get the revenge. It's not a quick revenge thing going on here. He's pretty methodical about how he is going to do certain things. You'd see him move one piece here, and you'd see the effects of that move by Dante's a few hundred pages later. So it's quite methodical, it's quite satisfying to watch that, and in the end it pays off big time. The ending is not how you'd predict it. It's not just, oh, he got revenge. There's a lot more to it. The focus on how the quest for this revenge, how this dedication, how this single dedication in his life to get revenge has changed him as a person, whether for the better or for the worse. So while this book has a lot of positives, while I love a lot of aspects of this book, it does have some negative aspects to it as well that I think that I wouldn't be doing a good job if I don't highlight them. The first one being that might bother some people is that the book is a bit repetitive, and it kind of makes sense because this book was released in these weekly episodes in a newspaper, I think. So like this book was released weekly. Because of this weekly release of the book has some repetitive elements to it that might turn off some people. The book is already 1200 pages long, and some people might feel that the same could have been achieved in 200 or 300 less pages. But I'm a lover of big books, so it didn't affect my enjoyment a lot. Another con for this book that I kind of have is that the first few chapters are based in post-French Revolution era, around 1800s France, and like for someone who is not super familiar with that era, I had to look up some quick summaries on the internet to kind of understand the historical context of this book, because that's kind of important for the first few chapters. The next criticism that I have can be considered by some people to be a tiny bit political, although I don't think that this should be. But if you're super sensitive about any political stuff, jump to this timestamp. The one thing that kind of bothered me in this book is how black slaves are treated in this book. So this book is still pre-1850s when slavery was abolished in France. So slaves are still a part in this book. So Dante's in this book, he owns some slaves, and these slaves are shown to be grateful that Dante's owns them rather than someone else, while Dante's does treat them a lot better than any other slave owner would, I imagine. Just the fact that these slaves are grateful that they are owned by Dante's rather than someone else just doesn't sit well with me. That just gives me a not a great feeling. Just the sheer fact that slaves can be grateful to their owners, that just sorts of, I don't know, it just felt off. But on the other hand, the author Dumas himself is a mixed race author, with his father being of African descent. So I'm not sure how to feel about this, but like I think that it was worth mentioning up. But given the book was released in 1840s, I'm not sure how much leeway to give for that point, but just wanted to mention it here. In the end, should you read The Count of Monte Cristo? Yes, you absolutely should. I don't think a ton of people will dislike the first 300 pages. I think that the first 300 pages are some of the absolutely best pieces of fiction that I have ever read. I can see some people being turned off by the tonal shift that happens after that 300 page point, but I think that, as I have explained earlier, I think that tonal shift happens for a reason, and I think if you kind of can appreciate for the reason, the purpose of that tonal shift, you'd come to appreciate a lot about why that tonal shift had to happen, and you'd very, very appreciate the remaining part of the book. The conclusion of this book is oh so satisfying. It has one of the most satisfying endings I have ever read, because it's not just a happy ending. It's an ending that makes you think. It's an ending that makes you think about a lot of themes that are explored in this book, and that's why I think you should definitely read this book. You should definitely give this book a chance, and I think fantasy lovers would especially love this book. I don't think that we are so used to reading long books, so I don't think that the length should be a problem here. Let me know if you have read this book. Let me know if you disagree or agree with any of my comments here, and yeah, let's have a healthy debate in the comment section. But until then, see you later.